One push into the water, and a $1 billion deal vanished before their eyes. Tonight, he didn't just humiliate her. He destroyed everything they worked for. The city lights of New York glittered like a battlefield of ambition, each skyscraper a monument to greed, power, and the secrets that billionaires kept hidden behind velvet ropes. The Metropolitan Gala, the most exclusive event of the year, was in full swing. Celebrities glided like royalty, CEOs mingled with socialites, and cameras flashed incessantly. But amidst the glamour, one moment was about to erupt into chaos that nobody would forget. Marcus Bennett adjusted his tuxedo in the reflection of a towering mirror, heart pounding. He had spent months preparing for tonight. Not just the gala, but the meeting with Damian Royce, the billionaire kingpin whose approval could make or break Marcus's empire. The $1 billion deal they had negotiated wasn't just money. It was power, influence, the future of Bennett Industries. And yet, Marcus couldn't shake a creeping unease. Damian was unpredictable, dangerous, and known for publicly humiliating anyone who dared to challenge him. Alicia Bennett appeared beside him, her emerald gown glinting under the chandelier lights. Her elegance was magnetic, her poise unshakable, but Marcus saw a spark of nervousness in her eyes. They were partners in life and business, but tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. Alicia smiled at him reassuringly, unaware that in just minutes, her life and their reputation would be shattered. The music swelled, a dramatic prelude to disaster. Then, as if on cue, Damian Royce appeared. Every head turned. Tall, impeccably dressed, his presence alone commanded attention. He didn't just walk. He glided, predatory, like a shark circling a pond. His gaze landed on Marcus and Alicia, a slow, cruel smile spreading across his face. "Ah, Marcus," Damian said, voice smooth and venomous, "so good to see you here." And Alicia, exquisite as always. "But tell me, darling, can you swim as well as you can pose?" Time slowed for Marcus. There was something in Damian's eyes, a dark, deliberate intent. Before anyone could react, Damian stepped closer, whispered something inaudible, and in a heartbeat, Alicia was pushed backward. She screamed as she plunged into the fountain at the center of the gala, water splashing over guests, champagne glasses toppling, and the soft murmur of polite conversation exploding into chaos. Gasps echoed, phones were lifted, and flashes immortalized the moment for the entire world. Marcus lunged instinctively, but Damian's security team intercepted him effortlessly. Damian, unshaken, raised his glass and smirked. "Consider your $1 billion deal canceled." The words landed like a hammer blow. Marcus felt the weight of betrayal, humiliation, and frustration in a single heartbeat. Years of hard work, sleepless nights, and calculated risk, all wiped out in one sentence. Alicia emerged from the fountain, soaked, hair plastered to her face, but her gaze was unbroken, fiery, burning with indignation. Social media erupted instantly. Hashtags trended, videos went viral, and the world watched in stunned fascination as the gala descended into a surreal mix of panic and spectacle. Hashtag Royce humiliation and hashtag billionaire scandal dominated feeds within minutes. Marcus's phone buzzed relentlessly with texts, notifications, and frantic messages from colleagues and media outlets. The humiliation was global, instantaneous, and merciless. Marcus reached Alicia, draping his jacket around her shoulders. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm but rigid with fury. "I will be," she replied, shivering. "But he can't get away with this." Marcus's jaw clenched. He realized in that moment that forgiveness wasn't an option, not tonight, not ever. Damian Royce had crossed a line. He had humiliated Alicia, destroyed their deal, and insulted Marcus's integrity in front of the entire world. This wasn't just business. This was a personal attack, a direct challenge. And Marcus wasn't the type to bow. Gala organizers scrambled to restore order. Towels were thrown to dry Alicia. Staff whispered apologies, and socialites murmured in disbelief. Damian Royce, sipping his champagne, radiated the arrogance of a man who believed he had already won. But he had underestimated Marcus's resolve and Alicia's unyielding strength. Back in the limousine, silence hung heavy, broken only by the quiet hum of the city outside. Alicia leaned against Marcus, trembling from shock and cold. "He's ruthless. He'll come after us," she whispered. "Let him," Marcus said, eyes cold, unwavering. "Because the world will see him for exactly what he is. And when I'm done, Damian Royce won't know what hit him." Alicia's fingers tightened around his. "Promise me. Promise me you won't lose yourself to revenge." Marcus looked out at the glittering skyline, the city alive with secrets and ambition. "I won't lose myself," he said firmly. "I'll win. And when we do, he'll wish he'd never set foot in our world." By dawn, news outlets across the country had picked up the story. Every major platform dissected the scandal, replayed the videos, and speculated about the aftermath. Marcus and Alicia were now unwilling celebrities, their lives exposed and analyzed by millions. And yet, amid the chaos, clarity shone through. Damian Royce had ignited a fire he could not control. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment and made a silent vow. Damian would pay, not with threats or bribes, but in the only currency that mattered to someone like Damian: reputation, dignity, and public defeat. The game had begun, and Marcus Bennett intended to play it ruthlessly. One push had ruined the night, but Marcus's counterstrike would ruin Damian's empire. And when it came, the world would watch, and justice would finally be served. The morning after the gala, New York was already buzzing with whispers, headlines, and the electric hum of social media. The images of Alicia Bennett drenched in the fountain had gone viral overnight. Hashtag Royce humiliation. Hashtag Billionaire scandal. Hashtag Gala disaster. Millions were watching, commenting, and sharing every frame of her public humiliation. Marcus Bennett stared at his phone, the screen glowing with notifications that refused to stop. Every message, every headline, every angry comment was a punch in his gut. Yet beneath the shock, a flame of fury burned brighter than ever. Alicia sat silently on the edge of the hotel bed, her gown replaced with a robe, damp hair tangled around her shoulders. She wasn't just physically shaken. Her dignity had been trampled in front of the most influential people in the world. She was a powerhouse, used to commanding rooms, making deals, and inspiring respect. But tonight, she had been a spectacle, a symbol of Damian Royce's cruelty. She swallowed hard, refusing tears, but Marcus could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. "Look at this," Marcus said, voice low but sharp, scrolling through the morning headlines. "The entire country thinks we're weak. They think Damian Royce just won." Alicia shook her head, finally meeting his gaze. "They don't know us," she said. "They don't see the real us. They see what he wanted them to see, us humiliated. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." The irony was brutal. Damian had succeeded in shattering the gala momentarily, but in doing so, he had also unleashed an unrelenting storm. Social media wasn't just sympathetic, it was enraged. Millions were calling Damian arrogant, bullying, and cruel. Corporations, sponsors, and even Damian's closest associates began whispering about the implications. No one wanted to be associated with someone who could publicly destroy a woman in such a spectacularly humiliating way. Marcus's phone rang. It was his CFO. "Marcus, the board is panicking. Some are suggesting we pull back from the deal entirely. They're scared Damian will retaliate further." He clenched his jaw. "Pull back? No. They're scared because Damian has crossed the line. But fear isn't going to win this. Strategy will." Even as he spoke, Marcus's mind raced. Years of planning, negotiation, and sacrifice had led to that $1 billion deal. Damian Royce had sabotaged not just the gala, but the culmination of Marcus's life's work. And yet, Marcus knew that letting this anger fester without control would be a mistake. He had to be smarter, faster, and more calculated than Damian could ever anticipate. Meanwhile, the media storm was relentless. Talk shows, online news, podcasts, all dissected the gala catastrophe with ruthless fascination. Footage of Alicia being pushed into the fountain played in endless loops. Commentators debated Damien's cruelty, Marcus's reaction, and the fate of the deal. Some framed Marcus as a sympathetic hero, others as a victim of arrogance. But the story had captivated the nation. Amid the chaos, Alicia found herself at a crossroads. She could wallow in humiliation, let Damien's cruelty define her, or rise above it. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were resolute. "Marcus," she said, voice steady, "we can't just survive this. We have to turn it into a weapon. We have to make him regret it completely." Marcus looked at her, a flicker of pride softening the rage in his eyes. "You're right," he said. "This isn't just about the money anymore. This is about justice. This is about showing him that no one, no matter how rich, no matter how powerful, gets to humiliate us and walk away unscathed." The public outrage became a double-edged sword. On one hand, Marcus and Alicia were under immense scrutiny. Every move, every word, every tweet analyzed to death. On the other, it gave him leverage. Damien's arrogance had left him exposed. Sponsors and investors who once lined up to support him began to hesitate, questioning his ethics, his judgment, and his temper. Inside the Bennett penthouse, Marcus mapped out his next steps. He knew Damien was dangerous, but he also knew that every empire had cracks, and he intended to find them. Alicia, once trembling from shock, now pored over strategy with Marcus, each plan more daring than the last. They were a unit, not just a husband and wife, but warriors preparing for a battle that would shake the foundations of Manhattan's elite. Meanwhile, Damien Royce remained oblivious to the storm he had unleashed. He sat in his high-rise office, sipping an expensive scotch, convinced his power shielded him from consequences. Yet, cracks began to form around him. Loyal allies whispered doubts, journalists sniffed scandal, and the public's fascination with his cruelty grew into obsession. The very audience he had underestimated, the millions witnessing every humiliation, now had the power to dismantle him. Alicia, inspired by her own strength, demanded they take action. "We can't let him think he's untouchable," she said. "Every move he makes, every smug smile he gives, we counter it. Every secret, every weakness, we expose it strategically." Marcus nodded. He had always believed in justice through action, not revenge for revenge's sake. But Damien had forced their hand, and tonight, as the city below pulsed with life, lights, and endless possibilities, Marcus realized the truth. Damien Royce had made the biggest mistake of his life. By humiliating Alicia, he had awakened something unstoppable. Their phones buzzed again, this time messages from lawyers, allies, and contact from across industries. Every message pointed to one conclusion: Damien's power, while vast, had vulnerabilities. Marcus felt a spark ignite within him, a mixture of fury, pride, and a relentless determination. He would not just recover the $1 billion deal. He would turn Damien's empire upside down, brick by brick, and make sure the world knew who had orchestrated it. And so, amidst the chaos, the headlines, and the public outrage, Marcus and Alicia began plotting. Each moment of humiliation fueled their resolve. Every viral clip of Alicia falling into the fountain became a reminder. They had been wronged, but they were not defeated. Damien's arrogance had set the stage, but Marcus's strategy would deliver the reckoning. By the time the sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, Marcus and Alicia were no longer victims. They were warriors. The public might have seen a husband and wife humiliated at a gala, but behind closed doors, the Bennetts were assembling a plan that would shake Damien Royce to his core. Every move he had made to assert dominance now became a liability. Every smug smile, every arrogant word, every act of cruelty was a weakness that could be turned against him. The storm was coming, and Damien had no idea. The night after the gala, Marcus Bennett sat alone in his private study, the city lights of Manhattan flickering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The glow of the skyline reflected off the polished mahogany desk, but the light did nothing to soften the darkness that had settled in his mind. Damien Royce had humiliated Alicia in front of the entire world, canceled their billion-dollar deal, and dared to believe he had won. But Marcus knew one thing with absolute certainty. Damien had underestimated him, and that mistake would cost him everything. Alicia entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee, her robe still damp from the night's chaos. Her hair was loosely pinned back, her expression a mixture of exhaustion, anger, and resolve. She placed 1 cup before Marcus and sat opposite him. "We need a plan," she said. "Not just a reaction, a strategy. He's arrogant, reckless. That's how we beat him." Marcus nodded, tracing the rim of his cup. "I've spent the night thinking about it. Damien isn't just a billionaire. He's a king in a castle built on fear, secrets, and manipulation. But even the strongest castles have cracks, and I intend to find them." The first step was intelligence. Marcus called in a small, trusted team, people who had worked with him for years, loyal colleagues who owed him more than just professional respect. Legal experts, financial analysts, and tech strategists arrived one by one, the room filling with a quiet intensity. No outsiders, no leaks. Every word spoken was encrypted in secrecy, because Damien's influence reached far and wide. "We need to know everything," Marcus said, pacing. "Every deal, every hidden investment, every weakness he's ever had. If we're going to turn the tables, we have to expose him using his own arrogance against him." Alicia leaned in, her fingers tapping a rhythm of determination against the tabletop. "He humiliated me publicly. That means he values perception above all else. If we can control what the world sees, we control him." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. And I've already started digging. There's something Damien thinks no one knows, something he's kept buried for years. A series of secret deals, shell corporations, shady acquisitions, even ethical violations. If we can bring even one of these to light, it will crack his empire from the inside." The next hours blurred into a frenzy of research. Marcus and Alicia went through documents, financial statements, and insider reports, piecing together a web of vulnerability. They found offshore accounts, hidden partnerships, and irregularities that Damien had thought were invisible. Each discovery felt like a step closer to justice, a step toward reclaiming what had been stolen from them. But Marcus knew that exposing Damien recklessly would be dangerous. Damien thrived on chaos, and if he suspected Marcus's hand too soon, he could retaliate with a fury that could destroy them completely. They needed precision, timing, and impact. "We have to hit him where it hurts the most," Marcus said, voice steady but intense. "Not just financially, socially, publicly, personally." He humiliated Alicia to show dominance. "We'll do the same. Only smarter, cleaner, and unavoidable." Alicia's eyes sparkled with a mix of anger and determination. "And I'll be the face of it. I've been humiliated, yes, but I won't be a victim anymore. The world will see what he did, and then they'll see him for who he really is." Hours turned into days as the Bennetts prepared. Each team member was briefed in secrecy, assigned tasks, and reminded of the ultimate goal: dismantle Damien Royce without mercy, but with the elegance and intelligence that only Marcus and Alicia could execute. Legal teams combed through contracts for loopholes, analysts tracked every financial irregularity, and social media strategists monitored public perception to determine the perfect narrative. And then Marcus found it, the key to Damien's undoing. A confidential report buried deep in corporate filings revealed a chain of unethical deals, acquisitions disguised as charity, offshore accounts hidden under false names, and personal investments in industries that Damien publicly condemned. One revelation stood out: a covert partnership with a controversial corporation that, if exposed, would destroy Damien's image overnight. Marcus's pulse quickened. "This is it," he said. "This is the thread we pull to unravel him." Alicia leaned closer. "We have to be meticulous. Timing, exposure, precision. If we move too soon, he'll fight back. If we move too late, he could bury it all." Marcus smiled grimly. "I know exactly how to use it." He thinks he controls the narrative. But the narrative will be ours, Alicia, and he won't see it coming. Yet even as they plotted, Marcus felt the weight of what they were about to do. Revenge was intoxicating, but it was also dangerous. Damien had power, money, and influence on his side. One misstep, and their lives could be ruined. But the humiliation, the canceled deal, the public spectacle of Alicia in that fountain, it demanded action. Marcus would not allow this injustice to stand. The Bennetts devised a layered approach. First, subtle leaks to media outlets, ensuring Damien's unethical partnerships began drawing attention without revealing the source. Second, private legal challenges that would freeze assets and create tension in his empire. Third, social influence campaigns highlighting his arrogance, cruelty, and public missteps, all without appearing retaliatory. Every move had to look organic, like fate itself was conspiring against Damien. Alicia's voice broke through his thoughts. "Marcus, you have to promise me something." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Anything. Promise me. We do this without becoming what we hate. We don't lose ourselves in this revenge. We destroy him, but we remain us." Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. "I promise. Damien Royce may have pushed us into chaos, but he will never make us lose ourselves. We'll fight smart. We'll fight precise. And we will win." The following week became a whirlwind of careful maneuvering. Marcus's team gathered evidence, strategized media narratives, and mapped every potential move Damien could make in retaliation. Each day brought new revelations about Damien's empire, his arrogance, and his personal vulnerabilities. Every secret uncovered was another brick removed from his fortress of power. And Marcus knew the most critical part: the world was watching. Millions had seen Alicia humiliated, but the public was still waiting for justice, waiting for someone to stand up to Damien. If executed correctly, their counterattack would not just reclaim the deal, it would shatter Damien's reputation permanently. The city was waking, oblivious to the storm that Marcus Bennett had quietly begun to unleash. Damien Royce thought the Gala humiliation had won him a victory, but the world had seen the Bennetts as weak and defeated. But beneath the polished surface of Manhattan's elite, a silent war had begun. Marcus sat in his private office, watching the early morning traffic flow like veins of gold through the city. Every detail of Damien's empire had been dissected, analyzed, and mapped. The game was on, and Marcus was holding the pieces. Alicia entered, her demeanor calm but electric with intensity. "The leaks are ready," she said, sliding a folder across the polished oak desk. "Media outlets, financial analysts, even industry insiders. Everything points to Damien's arrogance, his shady deals, his hypocrisy. It's time to let the world see him for who he really is." Marcus nodded, reviewing the documents. This isn't just about exposing him. It's about precision. One wrong move, and Damien could bury everything. We start subtly, let the cracks widen naturally, then deliver the strike. The first move was small but devastating. Confidential insider tips about Damien's secret offshore dealings and unethical partnerships were fed anonymously to top investigative journalists. Within hours, the first reports hit the headlines. Corporate blogs, financial magazines, and social media accounts began dissecting his empire. While the news didn't explicitly name Damien, insiders familiar with the billionaire quickly pieced it together. Comments exploded. Could it be Royce? Scandal in the making? Billionaire exposed? The online world was ablaze, curiosity sparking outrage. Meanwhile, Marcus's legal team quietly began reviewing Damien's contracts and financial filings. One particular loophole, a disguised charitable donation that was actually a tax shelter, could freeze a portion of Damien's assets if properly challenged. Marcus filed the case strategically, timing the media leaks to coincide with the legal action. Every move was a double strike: public exposure plus legal vulnerability. Across town, Damien Royce sipped his morning espresso, scanning the headlines, smug as ever, until he saw the first hints of trouble. His assistant stammered, "Sir, there are reports circulating about your charitable partnerships." Damien's smirk faltered. "Reports?" His voice was sharp, slicing through the air. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "I want the source. Find out who's leaking this. Now." Little did he know, the leaks weren't coming from a disgruntled insider. They were orchestrated by Marcus Bennett himself. Each subtle move was designed to destabilize Damien, without revealing the hand behind it. And the brilliance of it was that Damien's arrogance blinded him to the Bennett's orchestration. As the day progressed, social media and news outlets exploded with speculation. Analysts dissected financial filings, commentators debated morality and ethics, and the hashtag Royce Empire cracks trended nationally. Damien's carefully curated image of untouchable wealth and power began to crack. Sponsors who once flaunted their association with him quietly withdrew endorsements, citing reputational risks. Investors began asking uncomfortable questions. Every move he made to appear in control only highlighted his vulnerability. Meanwhile, Marcus and Alicia didn't stop. Alicia, once humiliated and paralyzed by shock, now became the face of their calculated response. She appeared in interviews, not as a victim, but as a symbol of integrity and resilience. Damien Royce may have thought he could humiliate us, she told a major financial news network, voice steady, eyes burning with purpose. But arrogance is always exposed by truth, and the world will see it. Marcus watched her, pride swelling amidst the fury. Alicia had transformed her trauma into power, and together, they were reshaping the narrative. Damien Royce, who had sought to destroy them publicly, was now facing the consequences of underestimating them. By evening, Damien's phone was a battlefield. Every message a warning, every call a potential crisis. His PR team scrambled to contain the leaks, his legal advisors counseled caution, and even his closest confidants began whispering doubts. For the first time, Damien felt vulnerability, a sensation foreign to a man who had long lived in unchallenged arrogance. But Marcus wasn't finished. The Bennetts had one more move planned for the week, a subtle public reveal that tied Damien's arrogance to concrete evidence of unethical behavior. They arranged for an anonymous tip to reach one of the top investigative journalists in New York, coupled with a trail of documentation leading directly to the proof. The journalist, sensing a career-defining story, prepared an exposé with the precision of a scalpel. That night, Marcus and Alicia reviewed every move, every response, every detail. He thinks he's winning, Marcus said, voice low and dangerous. But every public misstep, every arrogant smile he's given, it's all evidence. He's unraveling piece by piece, and he doesn't even know it. Alicia smiled, a mix of satisfaction and restrained fury. And the best part? He has no idea who's orchestrating this. To him, it's chaos. To us, it's strategy. By the following morning, the first major public reaction hit. Damien's unethical partnerships were no longer speculation. They were being scrutinized under a legal microscope. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire under investigation. Luxury empire in question. Man who humiliated CEO's wife now faces public outrage." Social media exploded. Millions commented, debated, and shared. Damien's carefully curated image was crumbling, and for the first time, he realized that the Bennetts weren't just seeking revenge. They were dismantling his empire with surgical precision. Marcus and Alicia watched it unfold from the safety of their office. Every reaction, every news cycle, every tweet confirmed that their strategy was working. Damien's arrogance, once his greatest weapon, had become his Achilles heel, and the public, unknowingly, was part of the Bennett strategy, magnifying his failures, amplifying his mistakes, and witnessing the shift of power in real time. By the end of the week, Damien Royce's world was subtly but unmistakably changing. Sponsors were distancing themselves, investors were wary, and whispers of scandal spread through elite social circles. For the first time, Damien felt the weight of the consequences of underestimating Marcus Bennett. And Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The cracks were showing. The empire was vulnerable. Damien's arrogance had blinded him, and the Bennetts were ready to exploit it fully. The first strike had been subtle, surgical, almost invisible, but it had landed. And when the Bennetts delivered the next moves, Damien would realize too late that the humiliation of the fountain was just the opening act of a revenge story that would become legendary. The counterattack had begun. Damien Royce had no idea that his world was about to collapse, and Marcus Bennett intended to make sure he felt every single second of it. The evening was electric. Another gala, another gathering of Manhattan's elite, but this time the energy in the room was different. The chandeliers sparkled like judgmental eyes, and the polished marble floors reflected the tension in the air. Damian Royce arrived in his usual display of arrogance, unaware that the world he had manipulated for decades was quietly slipping through his fingers. He smiled, confident, unaware that the very woman he had humiliated months ago was now the architect of his downfall. Marcus Bennett and Alicia arrived together, poised, confident, unshakable. Alicia's gown shimmered like emerald fire, every step exuding power, elegance, and control. Marcus walked beside her, calm, calculating, his eyes never leaving Damian. They were not the victims of the fountain humiliation anymore. They were the storm. As Damian shook hands and mingled, subtle signs of his unraveling began. Key investors, once loyal, sidled past him with polite nods but distant smiles. Sponsors whispered apologies and excuses, avoiding his gaze. The subtle hum of gossip, previously drowned out by Damian's arrogance, now pulsed through the room like a growing roar. Every corner of Manhattan's elite whispered one thing. Damian Royce was no longer untouchable. Alicia approached the center of the gala stage, her voice steady, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "tonight is a celebration of integrity, vision, and resilience. But sometimes, power is misused to humiliate and manipulate, and the world deserves to see the truth." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Damian froze, instinctively reaching for his champagne glass as if it could shield him. Marcus stepped forward, placing a hand on Alicia's shoulder, signaling calm yet deadly control. From behind, large screens flickered to life, projecting confidential documents. Images of shady offshore accounts, unethical corporate partnerships, and detailed proof of Damian's hidden empire flaws. Each image, each file, each statistic was a nail in the coffin of the man who had once humiliated Alicia in a fountain. The crowd murmured, horrified and captivated, as the magnitude of Damian's deception was revealed in crystal clarity. Damian's face went pale. The arrogance that had once been his shield now betrayed him. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He was trapped in a spectacle Marcus and Alicia had orchestrated flawlessly. Every move he had made to project untouchable dominance was now displayed as evidence of greed, hypocrisy, and cruelty. Alicia's voice cut through the tension. "We've been patient. We've been strategic. And now, the world sees who he really is. Power misused has consequences." The audience erupted. Social media screens in the room lit up instantly as attendees shared every detail, every image, every moment in real time. The hashtag Royce Reckoning trended nationally within minutes. Damian Royce's carefully curated empire, built on arrogance and fear, was unraveling before his eyes. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady, controlled, but carrying the weight of every betrayal, every sleepless night, every humiliation. "Damian Royce," he said, looking directly at the billionaire who had tried to destroy him. "You thought you could humiliate us publicly, cancel our deals, and walk away. You underestimated the power of truth, strategy, and resilience. Tonight, the empire you built on fear begins to crumble." Damian finally found his voice, but it was weak, strained. This is impossible," he spat. "You can't." "Watch closely," Marcus interrupted, calm and deliberate. "Every move, every secret you try to hide, every arrogance-fueled decision, it's all visible now. And the public, they are not forgiving." As the gala continued, investors quietly excused themselves from Damian's circle. Key sponsors formally announced reconsiderations, and journalists whispered confirmations of the evidence. Damian's allies tried to shield him, but the momentum was unstoppable. The humiliation he had once inflicted on Alicia now returned to him tenfold. Alicia's eyes softened only briefly, then hardened with resolve. "We are not here for revenge," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. We are here for justice, for integrity, for the message that no one, no matter how rich or powerful, can humiliate others with impunity. Damien's smirk had vanished entirely. The arrogance that had fueled his rise had become his prison. He fumbled through explanations, denials, and excuses, but the evidence was overwhelming. By the end of the night, his public image was fractured, his empire shaken, and his credibility decimated. But Marcus had one final stroke, a masterstroke, crafted in secrecy over weeks. The original $1 billion deal that Damien had canceled, Marcus restructured it, now in a way that forced Damien to acknowledge Alicia's leadership and publicly accept the terms that Marcus had always wanted. Damien had no choice but to comply, signing the deal in front of witnesses under conditions that left him powerless in comparison to Marcus. The very deal Damien had thought he controlled became the instrument of his humiliation and subjugation. As the gala drew to a close, Damien Royce sat alone, surrounded by whispers and judgmental eyes. His empire was still massive, but its foundation was unstable, and the public had seen the cracks. The woman he had pushed into a fountain was now standing triumphant beside her husband, the architect of his downfall. Marcus and Alicia walked out together, the city lights reflecting in their eyes. The world had watched their transformation, from victims of public humiliation to orchestrators of the ultimate revenge. Damien's arrogance had been defeated not by force, but by strategy, precision, and the unshakable bond of Marcus and Alicia. In the limo ride home, Alicia leaned on Marcus, whispering, "We did it. He finally feels what we felt." Marcus smiled, exhausted but victorious. "This is only the beginning. We rebuild stronger, smarter, and unshakable." And Damien, he will never forget tonight. For the first time in years, Damien Royce felt powerless. Not over deals, not over investors, not over public perception. The fountain humiliation had been the spark, but the Bennett strategy, patience, and intellect had delivered the fire. The ultimate revenge was complete, and the world had watched it unfold in real time. The city was quiet that morning, the streets bathed in golden light, yet the echoes of the previous night's chaos still lingered. Manhattan's elite whispered behind closed doors. Journalists revisited footage, and social media buzzed with commentary. Damien Royce, once untouchable, had been exposed, humiliated, and forced to bend under the weight of truth. But for Marcus and Alicia Bennett, the story wasn't just about revenge. It was about redemption, rebuilding, and rising stronger than ever. Marcus leaned back in his office chair, letting the city skyline wash over him. The $1 billion deal, once a symbol of power deferred, now represented triumph achieved, not through dominance, but through strategy, resilience, and integrity. Alicia stood beside him, calm and poised, her emerald gown replaced with the simple elegance of her daily attire. Yet her aura radiated the confidence of a woman who had conquered the impossible. "Do you ever think," Alicia began quietly, "that all of this, everything, could have been avoided if he hadn't pushed me into that fountain?" Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Maybe, but we wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened. That push had set everything in motion. It revealed what we were capable of together." Alicia smiled, a mixture of fondness and triumph in her eyes. "I suppose some fountains really do change lives." Their laughter was brief, but genuine. Outside, the city was waking, oblivious to the drama and strategy that had unfolded behind closed doors. But Marcus and Alicia didn't need the world to notice. They had seen each other's strength, resilience, and brilliance. That alone was worth more than any headline, any deal, or any fortune. The Bennetts began the process of rebuilding, but this time on their own terms. Marcus ensured the $1 billion deal was restructured to reflect transparency, ethical responsibility, and their shared vision. Investors who had once doubted them now sought to align with the integrity and intelligence that had orchestrated Damien's downfall. The empire Marcus and Alicia were creating wasn't just profitable. It was principled, admired, and resilient. Yet, the lessons of the past remained clear. Power without accountability is dangerous. Arrogance is a trap, and humiliation, no matter how public or private, can ignite either destruction or transformation. The fountain incident, while devastating in its moment, had revealed not weakness, but latent power, determination, and the ability to turn catastrophe into triumph. Meanwhile, Damien Royce retreated from the public eye. Sponsors abandoned him, investors distanced themselves, and social media immortalized his fall from grace. The man who had once stood tall, untouchable, now faced whispers of scandal, scrutiny, and self-reflection. His empire, while still massive, bore cracks that could never be fully repaired. And for Marcus and Alicia, that knowledge was enough. They didn't need to gloat. The victory was in the justice served, the lessons learned, and the lives reclaimed. Alicia spent her mornings mentoring young women in business, sharing not just the story of triumph, but the deeper lessons of resilience, strategy, and courage. Strength isn't in never falling. She would tell them, it's in rising after humiliation, turning every setback into an opportunity, and never letting anyone define your worth. Marcus, meanwhile, expanded Bennett Industries globally, building not just wealth, but influence rooted in ethics, vision, and respect. Every deal, every partnership reflected the principles they had fought for: integrity, fairness, and unwavering commitment to truth. The empire he and Alicia created wasn't just for profit, it was for legacy. Even Damien Royce became a cautionary tale in boardrooms, conferences, and classrooms. Students studied the collapse of his empire as an example of arrogance unchecked, a lesson in ethics ignored. Every public appearance, every failed partnership, and every whispered conversation reminded the world that even the mightiest can fall when integrity is absent. For Marcus and Alicia, the fountain became a symbol, not of humiliation, but of rebirth. A single moment of cruelty had set in motion a series of events that revealed their strength, intellect, and unwavering unity. And as the city lights of Manhattan reflected off the river that evening, they knew that the power of strategy, patience, and resilience could overcome even the most ruthless opposition. On a quiet night, Marcus and Alicia walked along the riverbank, hand in hand, the skyline glittering like 1,000 possibilities. The memories of the gala, the chaos, the public scrutiny, and Damien's eventual fall were present but distant. Lessons, not burdens. I never thought, Alicia said softly, that a push into a fountain could lead to all this. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Neither did I. But life has a way of turning even the darkest moments into something powerful if you face them together. Alicia leaned her head on his shoulder. Together, she whispered, echoing the sentiment that had carried them through humiliation, chaos, and strategy. They stood there in silence for a long moment, the hum of the city around them, the lights reflecting possibilities rather than threats. The world had witnessed their resilience. Damien Royce had experienced his comeuppance, and the Bennetts had emerged stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. It wasn't just revenge that had defined them. It was integrity, strategy, and unity. They had faced public humiliation, betrayal, and corporate sabotage, and transformed it into a triumph that would be remembered for years to come. As they walked back to their penthouse, the night sky open above them, Marcus and Alicia knew one truth. No matter how ruthless the world, no matter how powerful the adversary, they would always rise. Together, undefeated, unshaken, and ready for every challenge that lay ahead. And so, the story of the fountain, the canceled billion-dollar deal, and the ruthless billionaire became legend. Not just for the scandal, but for the triumph of resilience, strategy, and love that was stronger than any empire. The city would forget Damien's arrogance, but it would remember the Bennetts. And that memory, that legacy, would outshine every scandal, every humiliation, and every empire ever built.